A computer error may have allowed some non-citizens to register to vote, and the Senate has a new president. We'll talk about it next on Capitol View. Welcome to Capitol View, the program where we talk about state issues, sometimes federal issues, and how they just might affect your life. I'm Bernie Schoenburg from the State Journal-Register. With me today, Jerry Nowicki is back, but he is different because now he is the bureau chief of Capitol News Illinois over at the State House. Congratulations on the promotion.
Thank you, Bernie.
And welcome back. And Dave Dahl.
Taking some gray already.
That's it. You know, it happens. And Dave Dahl, who also has developed some gray since last we saw him. WTAX radio in Springfield, often at the State House, City Council, you name it, he's there.
Yeah, name it. Yes, thanks. I don't really care about the color anymore, as long as it's there.
Well, let's get down to business. Boy, have we had an interesting lesson in automatic voter registration this week, because there was a computer problem, a programming problem at the Secretary of State's office that was revealed, where it turns out more than 500 people who apparently either filled out a form or hit a button at the Secretary of State's office saying they are not citizens of the United States, had their data, their names forwarded to local election authorities to be registered to vote. As it turns out, this automatic voter registration program, which started in 2018 in Illinois, where anybody not registered has to say no if they don't want to be registered, and when you go to the Secretary of State's office to update or get a driver's license or an identification card, your information goes on to local election authorities, you get registered. And it turns out that this was a glitch. Secretary of State's office said they made a mistake. 15 people have voted, but it turns out at least 3 of them, and maybe as many as 5 and maybe more, are actually citizens. So there was a mistake, and there's a lot of reaction to this. Dave?
So in the subset of the subset, they were the ones who made the mistake in saying, no, I'm not a U.S. citizen. But the actual number of people who actually voted while being not citizens, we don't know. But everybody who is reacting to this will tell you that even one is too many.
Well,
and they've got more than 500 people who wrongly were sent to the voter registration.
Yeah, more than 500 were registered, received cards. I think the latest now, I think, is 13 people they say may have been non-citizens. And
well, the latest I heard, they thought it was 16 people voted, and at least 3 were actually citizens when they checked. The State Board of Elections revised the number. It was actually only 15 people voted in a total of 19 elections starting in November of 2018, and then the spring elections.
And 3 of those were citizens.
Yes, at least 3 of those were citizens. One, I know one from Peoria County, one from Christian County, and there was another county in there too.
Right, and none of them illegal immigrants here illegally, I don't believe.
Yeah, the Secretary of State's office said that in order to even get into the automatic voter registration program, if you're getting a driver's license or renewing a driver's license or an identification card of this type, you have to be legally in the United States. So while these people are non-citizens, it is not correct to say they are undocumented. They are documented.
Right.
Most of them probably have green cards or some other legal residency that they have. And so that is not the problem. But we've seen a lot of Secretary of State's office admits that they made a mistake. They say it's fixed, but we've seen a lot of reaction from both parties, but particularly Republicans who came out early, including a State House press conference with U.S. Representative Rodney Davis, who oversees some election money that goes to states at the federal level,
Right,
and 6 legislators saying, at least some of them said we should suspend this program, but the Secretary of State's office has not done that, and the State Board of Elections says we don't need to do that.
Right, anytime you're undermining the kind of voter system, that's a major problem. 13, whatever it is, it's a big problem, and it's going to be brought up for a long time, probably years to come, in states that are considering a program like this. It's a bad look for the Secretary of State, and a lot of people, like you said, the legislators, Rodney Davis, they're calling for hearings on it at a statewide level, and they'll probably get something like that. I think Emmanuel Chris Welch from the south suburbs, he's said his House
Hillside,
Executive Committee,
yes.
Yeah, Hillside, he said his House Executive Committee will look into it.
Right, and in fact, he said it's probably going to be next Thursday, early in the morning perhaps, but there will be a hearing on this. coming up. Dave,
Day
what
after
are
the
they going to
state-
find out? And
The day after the State of the State.
that's right.
They're going to find out that our lawmakers will be huffing and puffing and calling for immediate discussion and wondering how this could have happened and why it happened. And it just goes to show that you can't rush into this and maybe it wasn't a good idea. It'll be like all kinds of investigations where the lawmakers will, find their way to a microphone somehow and say that it's a travesty.
Well,
That one is too many. It undermines the very underpinnings of our democracy.
Yeah, it's been a pretty bipartisan call for fix this, explain this, whatever. That being said, I don't foresee a circumstance where they repeal automatic voter
Well,
registration.
let's talk some numbers, though, because I think it's more than 700,000 people had their names referred to local election authorities from the Secretary of State's office, and more than 600,000 of those were actually registered to vote. In the year and a half that this program, or maybe 2 years that this program has been active, that's a lot of people. And then you find the subset of 500 names inappropriately moved along, some of whom turn out to be citizens, but were at least listed on the computer that's supposed to stop it when a button is hit that says non-citizen. And then again, the number of votes ended up being 15, with a dozen of, with at least 3 of them being actual citizens. So somebody made a mistake. They either self-identified wrongly or hit the button. I'm sure that hearings will probably show maybe the computer program that people were asked to go through was a little difficult. Apparently, once you start it, there might not have been a way to get out of it unless you said you weren't 18 or not a citizen, and maybe
Right.
somebody in a hurry just said, okay, I'm out of here. Or maybe they thought hitting no means I don't want to register to vote because I'm registered already, because some
Well,
people were.
And hopefully this is the type of information the executive committee will look for and be able to relate to us when we're talking about this next time on the show.
So just political ramification. This comes at a time when President Trump is president. He's involved in a re-election campaign. He has talked about voter fraud a lot. He has clearly, based on news stories, has overblown how much voter fraud there was, but this certainly gives an opening for people to say there's a problem, even if there's one.
Makes me wonder if it's hard enough to register to vote. I mean, maybe it's too easy.
Well, it is interesting. Everybody, oddly, this automatic voter registration was not a partisan thing. It passed once, and Governor Rauner, who's a Republican, vetoed it, saying there weren't safeguards against just this kind of thing happening. A year later, it passed with support from both parties, and Governor Rauner, the Republican, signed it into law. So even when the Republicans including Tim Butler of Springfield, had the press conference with Rodney Davis, the congressman, talking about the need for assurances nothing like this will ever happen again. And of course, they were also asking for suspension of the program for a time, which apparently is not happening. But they were saying that this is, they were for the program. They just want to make sure it works right. So we'll see where it goes.
We'll see.
And state elections are not for another couple of years. I mean, we've got the national election this year, so it'll be 2022 before Secretary of State's office is up for election. So we'll see if it blows over or continues to be an issue for years to come. And there you go.
Can anything bring down Secretary White?
Well,
Retirement?
he only has announced his retirement about 3 times and not done so. So we will see if he ever gets serious about that. He's been in office for quite a long time. On to another issue. Don Harmon is the new president of the Senate. Let's set the scene and talk about the race there.
Yeah, it was a long day Sunday. There was a secret ballots and a lot of behind-the-scenes discussions. They wouldn't let you in, the press, the media, they wouldn't let you in the 3rd floor corridor by the Senate President's office where these discussions were happening. They wouldn't let you in the floors immediately below it.
Very unusual for that much secrecy to be going on. And
Yeah.
what they met, the Democrats got together and met for like 5 hours before they went out to the floor, correct?
Right. So it was Don Harmon is the new Senate president, Democrat from Oak Park, and his main competition was Senator Kimberly Lightford from Maywood, an African-American woman. And there was apparently a riff in the Black Caucus. There was a lot of sort of intrigue allegations of double crossing and the whole.
Actually, and in the public eye and the stuff that was done on the floor, everything was wonderful and unity, because Lightford, after the whole decision was made in the Democratic caucus, which is the overwhelming majority of the Senate, she's the one that nominated Harman, and he said she would be, top on his leadership team.
We hugged on the floor.
Yeah, but then she did tell the Chicago Sun-Times and perhaps another outlet saying she blamed former Senate President Emil Jones for getting back at her for the vote she took 11 years ago when Cullerton became president. And
Right.
Perhaps he had been for Jim Clyburn, who was from I think Belleville, African-American person. It was so clearly there was some difficulty, but Harman, liberal guy. I think he's a Democratic committeeman from Oak Park area, so he's a strong party person. I think he was the sponsor of gun shop legislation, which sells well in the suburbs, not so well in some areas downstate.
Graduated income tax.
He's a very strong advocate, and I guess he was the sponsor of the graduated income tax and there's a constitutional amendment that people will vote on this fall. But he, of course, I heard him say in an interview with public TV in Chicago that the Democrats will come together. It's kind of like a family at Thanksgiving. They argue, but then they'll come together. Dave?
Well, we'll see. When you're accusing somebody of saying, well, you said you'd support me, and then you support the other person, I would think that stings a little bit. And I've never been in a Black Caucus meeting or any other kind of a caucus meeting. I would go if I were invited, but I could see where there'd be some hard feelings. You've got a situation where the Joneses let this simmer for 11 years, where Kimberly Lightford voted for Cullerton and not Claiborne, I should say. So, maybe they will come together. Maybe there will be some, torn curtains that they'll have to scotch tape up. But I think for the most part, in the Cullerton years anyway, the Democratic caucus has been pretty cohesive. And there are so many of them, they can really do whatever they want if they all put their minds to it.
Yeah, they were cohesive under President Cullerton, but there was still frayed relationships. Not every senator got along with every senator. So there's going to be
it's a
frayed
diverse
relationships.
Caucus, and people, geographically diverse and ideologically in some ways.
Yeah, the question is, how will that get in the way? Will it get in the way of their agenda? With the supermajority, you could lose 9 people that are settling a score, and you'd still have one more than enough votes to get something
We have
out
an
of your
overwhelming
chamber.
majority of Democrats,
40 senators is a lot
How
of
do we
senators.
think Senator Harman of Oak Park will get along with Governor Pritzker? I think they've known each other for a long time.
It's true. And Harman was behind Senator Biss for the governorship. But I think Governor Pritzker has shown that he can get stuff done almost whatever he wants to. So you wouldn't foresee any problems, would you? With the Senate Democrats among themselves, and with their new president, and with our still relatively new governor. A governor who's gotten a lot of wins on the scoreboard for himself in his first year.
Right. Well, we've got a second year coming up. Senator Harman, one of the things he has stressed is the need for ethics legislation. Of course, there's these ongoing investigations that have involved some senators. A former legislator in the House quit. A senator quit. He and the governor have to make it look, I think, or will try, like not only are current laws being enforced, but ethics is on the table, and they want to make some change. Are we expecting anything in particular?
He made a big step toward it. He announced in that same public interview you were talking about
Don
that
Harman.
he's Senator Harman, President Harman, will forego his relationship with his law firm.
That's right. That's a biggie.
Step down from that.
Which is very different from what others. I mean, Mike Madigan, the Speaker of the House, has been in trouble with the Republicans, or a target of them for a long time, because he is in a law firm and they do property tax reduction work for people. And Senator Cullerton has been with a law firm the whole time he was Senate president.
Right, and interestingly, I think his law firm was named in the FBI investigation of Senator Sandoval. That's not saying he had anything to do with Senator Sandoval in that regard. It's just the name of the law firm was in there. So, Optically, this was the right decision. He's going to forego a lot of probably a large salary, but
Well, he said he wouldn't have time to. He needs the time to do the job of president, right? Because it'll be all consuming or very consuming. So we'll see what changes get yielded there. Also, we should name, and President Cullerton on the way out talked about all the things he did over the years, although he did a series of interviews with various outlets, and really didn't speak very much other than to congratulate everybody when Senator Harman was in and, talk about going home to family, and it was a little emotional. But interestingly, someone who once worked for him and someone he encouraged to run for the legislature, Sarah Feigenholtz, has been a state representative in Chicago. She's been named by the Democratic group up there to replace President Cullerton in the Senate. So just kind of an interesting thing for the people in Springfield who know these folks. But Feigenholtz has been, a progressive legislator for a long time from the city of Chicago.
Yeah, so she'll have an interesting role in the Senate. I think she kind of had a frayed relationship with the speaker, if that's correct.
I don't recall any particular incident, but she's certainly a strong and independent person.
Right. So yeah, it'll be an interesting addition to that Democratic caucus.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need a change.
Yeah. As we are taping this show, the governor will be set before this airs to sign a bill in Springfield that was sponsored by State Senator Andy Minar of Macoupin County to limit the amount of money people under certain insurance plans have to pay per month for insulin. And that's just kind of will be another legislative accomplishment, and the kind of thing that a person like Governor Pritzker wants to get done.
Yeah, in the whole tour when they were promoting this bill, you heard a lot of stories about people rationing their insulin, dying from it, having major health problems from it. Yeah, it's a problem. This isn't some sort of broad solution. I don't know the number of plans, but it's not too large a number of plans that would be affected. Is it the state regulated plans, but not
it might be,
federally
and I know
regulated?
Senator Minar has said what really needs to happen is change at the federal level, but this is a step in that direction and will help some people.
Yeah, I think state employees would benefit from it.
So we'll see.
We'll probably have the same people who are diabetics, whom the senator has had at all of the news conferences about this to talk about a lifesaver. It's not going to be just a money saver, it'll be a lifesaver, and the bill signing is scheduled to be at the same place where the senator has been talking up the bill all along, the Central County's Health Center.
Right, which gets a lot of federal funding. I'm not sure if it's all, but that's in Springfield. And I know there was at least a little opposition to the bill because people arguing how can you have government set the price of a single drug. On the other hand, someone like Senator Minar would say you got to start somewhere, and insulin has been around for so long that the price spikes don't seem to be justified.
Yeah, and the version of that bill that passed, I believe, has an index. It'll go up, index for inflation.
So compromises are made in the legislative process. The governor also signed a bill this last several days to end driver's license suspension for non-moving violations like unpaid parking tickets. And I read one story that said from ProPublica that this could allow like 55,000 people across the state to regain driving privileges. So this again, it's not exactly criminal justice reform, but it is in that system, and they're basically saying it's too punitive. If someone has parking tickets but no indication that they have moving violations when they drive, if you take away their driver's license, they can't get to work. That's at least the argument that he's making. So it certainly fits the mindset of, help folks who are already in need, at least as you want to look at it, because obviously if folks aren't paying their parking tickets, that's an annoyance too to society and to the cities that are owed that money.
But yeah, they call it the License to Work Act, I believe. You got to have your license to get to work. You got to have the license to be able to pay off those tickets. That had bipartisan support too. Rep. Alan Skillicorn, who's a fairly conservative
He's a very conservative
guy.
representative.
I believe he spoke in favor of it on the floor even at the time. So. It's just one of those small things that could make a big difference.
Here you go. So the State of the State address is next Wednesday. What kind of, Governor Pritzker did a round of interviews marking his 1 year in office recently in late January. What are we expecting to hear? I know he has, Dave?
The state of our state is strong, and this coming year is going to be even better than the one we just completed. That's what these things are for.
Yeah,
maybe he'll give a preview or two of the budget speech, which is 3 years after that.
Yeah, he has said, he did say to me that he had spoken to Jim Edgar, former Republican governor, who was very upset with Republican Governor Bruce Rauner for the budget impasse, for not having a state budget for 2 years, because Edgar even went public by saying the most important thing a governor does is just pass a balanced budget to keep the state operating. That budget document is what allows everything to happen. And Governor Pritzker says he got the same message from Edgar and believes it and will make it a priority, even though it may not be as exciting as some things, but just pass a budget so that the state government can operate and the agencies that operate with state money can continue.
Yeah, so with the state, you can kind of get a glimpse as to what his main issues are going to be. I think he'll probably mention criminal justice reforms, plans to get rid of cash bail in the state, as that he's already.
Which again would be something similar. That's kind of a national movement. Again, that's similar to saying, you shouldn't have your driver's license suspended because you can't pay the bill, and people shouldn't sit in jail just because they don't have enough money to get out,
right.
which is a very different system, but it's a progressive move in various parts of the country that this Democratic legislature and this Democratic governor probably are saying they want to bring to Illinois.
And in that regard, I think he'll probably continue his themes of saying Illinois is a counterweight to what's going on at a national level. That's one of his favorite talking points.
As we are on a very liberal or open abortion law to allow the procedure in Illinois, where some other states have cut back severely. That's one of the accomplishments from his first year. And of course, I'm sure he'll mention the minimum wage increase that passed last year, which has started to ratchet up, and by 2025 will be at $15 an hour in Illinois.
And the graduated tax might get a mention or two.
That's right, because the big fight over the graduated tax is coming because the legislature already voted last year to put it on the ballot, not until the November election, and Governor Pritzker has already put $5 million of his own money into an outside group, because you have to do it that way. You can't have the government advocating with government money for how people should vote on a ballot question, but he will clearly be funding the outside group set up to advocate for that, while business groups say, and of course the graduated income tax, the governor says, means the state will get $3.5 billion a year more, which they need, but only the top 3% will pay more and everybody else will pay the same or less in income tax. But Republicans almost universally and some business groups say, no, it won't work, you won't get enough money, and the middle class will end up paying more. So we're going to see this big fight all year long, and you're right, we'll probably hear about it.
Well, and because Republicans will have suburban Republicans, that is, like Leader Durkin and such, will have a difficult time tying elections to President Trump. That's going to be their thing that they try to get voters to the polls on is, you got to defeat this graduated income tax.
Right. Well, the fact that some of Governor Pritzker and the legislature's accomplishments in the last year include like the $45 billion construction program for buildings, but also roads. That included, among the funding sources, was a doubling of the gasoline tax. So this idea that Illinois is a high tax state, it got bipartisan support, but there will still be some people saying, hey, taxes are bad, so the progressive tax will add to that. So the whole does Illinois tax too much debate will be clearly a part of this.
Oh yeah, just having the word tax in a referendum is enough to get a lot of people to say no. Yeah.
What about property taxes? The governor has said and of course they are paid to local governments, and a big chunk of property taxes, the most in maybe all communities, but certainly most, go to schools, and that's partly because the state, which our Constitution says should be the predominant funder of education, isn't. It's only been paying about, at least in recent years, only about 26% of the K through 12 costs, and property taxes have to make up the rest. Governor says he wants to do something about that. He says that things like the capital plan are already helping, because a lot of that money, or most of the road money, goes to local governments for roads, so that takes the pressure off the local property taxpayers, so they can Perhaps local governments can lower property taxes. We don't know if that'll happen, but can the governor legitimately push the state in a direction that helps property tax costs, as all governors say they want to do, to push them down?
It sounds like a good idea. I'm not sure how he can at this point. I mean, they're so high. State hasn't helped with schools. If I'm a mayor, I probably feel like I'm in a tight spot.
Right. I mean, that's the thing with the schools. So the evidence-based funding, I think, is $350 million is added to K-12. So at that rate, it'd take a very long time to affect those property taxes. But that the number one way the state could do that is invest more in public education. That's how you alleviate property taxes. But there's no surplus in this state budget right now, and that's why they say they need the graduated income tax. To a large chunk of that $3.5 billion will supposedly go towards schools.
Right, and of course that won't happen until it's like a year away for that extra money because
November.
You can't charge a graduated income tax or implement one until that passes in November, and we're a ways away from that. Well, with that, we will keep an eye on what the governor says. Jerry Nowicki and Dave Dahl, thanks for your conversation. Thanks for helping. I'm Bernie Schoenburg. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Capitol View.